So one thing that my research group and I have been working on for several years is computer vision and how to use neural network to recognize geological features. We are in particular interested, of course, in carbonate rocks, because we're carbonate sedimentologists originally, and in how we can use different architecture of neural network to extract information from these particular rocks. Now, one particular architecture of interest for us are the CNN, or Convolutional Neural Networks. So let's have a look at them. This is a CNN. It's known as Inception, and it was made by Google. And immediately what you can see is that there are many layers. And that's one of the challenge of these big network, is that they have extremely numerous layers with neurons. So they're extremely difficult to train, and that's why they're known as deep network as well, or deep learning, because you go much deeper in terms of number of layers and in what you can extract from the dataset. What's interesting with Inception is the fact that it has Inception cells. So let's look at those Inception cells. Those Inception cells is where the convolution of the convolutional neural network happens. And you can see that if we start with the green cell at the bottom, that's a pre-activation cell, the dataset is split into numerous filters that are known as convolutional filters. And the size of those filters vary, and we'll talk in the next minute about those convolutional cells or filters. But what's interesting is that the result of all of these convolutional cells are concatenated at the very end, and then we pool all of these results before we send the pooled result to the next convolutional cell. And that's what makes convolutional neural networks so special. It's the convolutional filters. So it's worth spending a bit more time looking at what these filters do actually. So the way I like to think of a convolutional filter is as a reducing of the information, the visual information. So now look at the one on the left. This is known as a 3x3 convolutional filter because we do twice the same reduction of information. So essentially you take a window of 3x3 pixels, so that's 3 pixels, and you average the value on those pixels and you reduce it to 1 pixel. And then you move the window by 1 pixel to the left and you do the same thing, and then 1 pixel to the left, the same thing. And once you get to that second layer here, what you have is a reduced set of information from that bigger set of pixels, and that reduced set of 3x3 pixel can be reduced even more by applying a second 3x3 convolutional filter. And that's really, I think, the interesting thing, because it means that you not only extract the information pixel by pixel, but you look at groups of pixel and what greater information you can extract from a group of pixels. And in many ways, that's what humans do. When we look at the picture, we don't focus on one pixel. We look at the picture as a whole, as a collection of pixels that represents something. And I think that's the strength of convolutional neural network, is that they imitate that human ability to synthesize data at the pixel level. And we can also apply different convolutional filters. So here, for instance, you have a 5x5 convolutional filter. And I think, again, one of the beauty of Inception and those convolutional neural network, they're complex, but because they have these different filters, they're able to synthesize data at different levels. And so they're more robust to things like size of the picture, or maybe even rotation of the picture, or compression of the picture. But a big issue with deep neural network and deep learning is the amount of data you need to train your algorithm is enormous. In fact, Google used millions of images to train their network. And as a geologist, you don't always have millions of labeled images at your disposal. Luckily, there's a little trick, and that's called transfer learning. So the idea behind transfer learning is to use a network that is trained on a large data set. For instance, CNN are trained on ImageNet by Google, and they're taught to learn to recognize images. And then you take that network, that trained network, and you retrain the labeler, the target label. So you retrain just the part of the algorithm that recognizes different classes, but you use most of the network as trained on the larger data set. The logic behind this is to think that images are images, and it doesn't matter if you're looking at a an image of a bike or an image of a geological dataset. In other words, whether you look at cats, car, dogs, flowers, or whether you look at cores, both sets of data being images have very similar structures. So if we go back now to Inception, what you can do is you can use most of Inception. So all of the part of the net that was trained on 14 million labeled images in 20,000 category, you basically don't retrain it. And all you need to do is to train the very end, the final output, on a much smaller data set, for instance, of geological cores, that you then basically train to recognize your particular classes. And transfer learning is one of these bleeding edge technology that is more and more used, and I think it has a lot of potential for geological applications. So keep an eye on that space because it's very important.